Two more panels to go, and this one is a great one. It's being moderated by Ray Maistre, editorial director of TelecomTV, and they're going to be discussing what challenges we need to address to scale Open RAN. It's probably one of the best panels of today, very real, with serious takeaways and call to actions to the industry. Welcome, Ray. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Eugenia. So, no pressure then. Did Eugenia just say this was going to be the best session of the day? I think she did. So we're getting back right into Open RAN now and looking at what needs to be done before Open RAN can be accelerated and some of the key challenges. So I'm Ray Maistre. I'm the editorial director at TelecomTV. As you can see, I'm old school, wearing a suit, got a clipboard. But the discussion is going to be anything but old school. You know, there's a great deal of talk about the potential of Open RAN in the industry amongst the operator community, but that interest hasn't yet translated so much into major network investments or commitments from many operators outside Japan and the greenfield deployments in the US and Germany. And of course, some exceptions like Vodafone, who showed this morning what they're doing and trying to drive the market. So what is the holdup? So during this session, we're going to focus on some of the factors that are potentially causing bottlenecks in the Open RAN sector and getting some suggestions from our speakers about what potentially could be done to ease those bottlenecks and encourage greater investment in Open RAN. So I'm now going to invite our 6 speakers onto the stage, so please do give them a big round of applause. Let's welcome our speakers. Okay. Excellent. And so we're just going to do a quick round of intros so you know who everybody is, and we'll go from this end to that end. So if we can start here, name, rank, and number, and what you do in your job.
Perfect. Thanks, Ray. I'm glad to be here. My name is Matteo Fiorani. I'm head of our Cloud RAN distributed unit application at Ericsson. And I'm mostly responsible for the VU application and also the open interfaces connected to it, open frontal and F1 interface.
Okay, thank you. Munish.
Hi, I'm Munish Chhabra, and I'm responsible for Radisys O-RAN software business. And as you know, Radisys has been providing O-RAN software right from the 4G and now contributing onto the 5G as well with the multi-architecture, multi-platform software.
Gil.
Hi, I'm Gil Hellman. I'm responsible for the field, basically solution engineering and architecture, from the initial engagement with the customer all the way to the small-scale deployment of O-RAN solution.
Maria.
Hi, everyone. Maria. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Weaver Labs. We are a startup in the telecoms industry building end-to-end orchestration software. So we've been doing a large number of field trials with all of these new suppliers in the ecosystem.
Okay, Eduardo.
Hello, Eduardo Ramirez, Vice President of Marketing at ARM, responsible for infrastructure marketing, which includes 5G infrastructure.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is John Baker from Mavenir, one of the leading suppliers of Open RAN systems in the marketplace today. I lead Mavenir's Open RAN initiatives. I also sit on the board of the Open RAN Policy Coalition and then just recently co-chair of the industry engagement group from the O-RAN Alliance.
Okay, thanks everybody. So in this session, we probably will get into some of the technology drivers in Open RAN, but we're trying to broaden this out and not delve into what some of the other sessions are getting into. So I'm going to start off by just mentioning the potential cause of a bottleneck for Open RAN, go to one of the speakers ask them for an opening statement, and then see, let the debate go from there across the panel. Munish, I'm going to start with you. There's a sense in the industry right now that a lot of the mobile operators are going through a bit of a reset, a business reset, going back to basics. And as a result, they might even become more risk averse in general, and this could be putting the brakes on some Open RAN commitments. Do you see any evidence of that in the market, or do you think that's something that might be manifesting itself at the moment?
Sure, I think this is an interesting question. If you look at it, it's not that operators have stopped deploying it or they are putting brakes or anything like that. I think it has slowed down, but it is also slowed down because they want to watch the success of other operators coming in. As you can see, across the globe, tier 1 operators have started deploying Open RAN solutions. Now, there are the Open RAN dream that started with everything being open. So maybe those deployments are not with everything being open. So there are challenges that industry still needs to solve, and it has already progressed in that direction. And I'll highlight a few of the points here. First and foremost point I would say is the integration across a lot of these different components. As an operator, they don't want to take ownership of all the integration, right? So this has to be solved by the industry, by the vendors coming in together. In fact, communities or forums like TIP and others, where how much standardization can be created, and certification becomes very important to those standardization. Because as an operator, if I have to integrate each and every piece, and all of these components talk on different versions of the specifications, then they're an R&D house, right? They will lose their focus on deployment, they'll do R&D. So this piece definitely we need to solve as industry together. Second part, I would also say on the same lines, is the operations, the manageability aspect of it. When think of it as a solution coming in from a single vendor or legacy solutions, all the solutions or the complete solution, which includes all the components, they're managed through a single interface. Again, the industry needs to come up and create a common interface for all the components. Even within the components, like 7.2 being very, I would say, famous open interface, the implementation of 7.2 by different RU vendors is different. Similarly, the M-plane implementation is also different. So we need to, in a way, create common forums or certification where all of them come together and solve this challenge for the operators.
Okay, I might come back to you on some of that. Does anybody else want to comment?
I would, of course, that risk, if you look at us as a human in general and companies, we fear the unknown, okay? And until we have more knowledge, we are reluctant to move forward. What we're seeing is we're seeing first deployments that are now reaching very large scale. Verizon, it's an example, and Vodafone that announced. And the data is starting to come out. And as the data comes out and we see that it matches and even better than traditional RAN, this is where we'll start to see more and more operators jumping in. But everyone at the beginning sits on the fence waiting to see the real data. Because standards are great, but you can have all the standards, but until someone actually goes and put it to work in real life, and until you have the data, it's very challenging. And the nature of this industry, it takes time to get the data.
Okay. If I can just come back to you, Munish, you made some good points there, but I wonder how much if operators are going back to basics now with their business plans, they might wait another year to see if the industry can collaborate more and come out with some blueprints or easier way to integrate. But then that means they might just mothball a plan for a year. Do you think there's anything going on right now that can make them think, oh, well, actually, this isn't so much of a risk. This is something I can be doing now to actually take advantage and maybe be more competitive in a market? Is that potential viewpoint? Are you hearing any of that kind of thing from operators?
Yes, in fact, I would say it's not that it is far away. The only thing what it requires is somebody to stand up and say, operators, you guys don't need to worry about it. The solution that is going to come in with multi-vendors is going to have the same, I would say, experience that you will get from legacy solutions. So that's where the need of a body that will bring everybody together at one interface, that's where it's important.
Okay. And to be fair, we are starting to hear a little bit more of that as well, and we did this morning. So if we can move on to the next talking point, one of the things about Open RAN, for years, was the talk about, greater vendor diversity. This was one of the big promises, especially across the full spectrum of technologies, including alternative RAN supplier options. John, do you think Open RAN has delivered on this promise of delivering greater options in terms of the RAN supplier ecosystem? Because probably some of the operators were waiting to have a plethora of companies to go to with their RFIs, and potentially they might be a little bit disappointed even in 2023.
Yeah, and for those of you that follow me on LinkedIn, I've just recently been publishing what I call the villages of Open RAN, and in there's over 125 vendors across essentially the three segments of Open RAN, so radio, CU, DU, and RIC. And there's probably about 20 suppliers in most of the categories, and coming out of that, there's 10 plus end-to-end system suppliers or system integrators that are coming up the pipeline. So absolutely, Open RAN has truly delivered on bringing the new vendors and the investment from the marketplace. I think what you're seeing is that those vendors in there are really sticking to the principles of open interfaces and true interoperability. And I think, with the announcements of Ericsson and Nokia this week, absolutely welcome, to the ecosystem, but we've got to maintain open and interoperable interfaces, and interfaces have got to be certified. Otherwise, we're going to get back into this trap of feature creep that suddenly says this is not open and it's not interoperable, and this is all about certification. And I think it was mentioned this morning that about 15 OTICs. Now, in that as part of the ecosystem, the OTICs and other groups have got us, essentially certified product. Otherwise, again, we got vendor creep and stuff, really taking place. And the vendor ecosystem is growing to the extent that we'll eventually get to plug and play. Now, plug and play is still a long way off, but setting the groundwork of open interfaces, standards that are truly met, and standards will live on, and we'll get new features, and vendors will develop new products. But I think from where we started, from Mavenir's perspective, 6.5 years ago, when people were saying, well, this is never going to happen, to where we are today with networks, such as Sid was saying this morning, 15,000 sites of Open RAN with 15 radios per site, and it's 150,000 radios sitting in that dish network. And that's a true brownfield type complexity. Of all the different vendors that brought that together, I think there was 30 plus vendors that brought that dish network together. So, the vendors are there, the vendors are very willing to get engaged. And, every day somebody's coming to me and saying, please put my name on the list. And, for you guys out there that haven't got your name on the list, just drop me an email, and, we'll grow this ecosystem. But it truly is about, growing the ecosystem. It is a geopolitical ecosystem as well. Let's not ignore that fact that, the geopolitics of, bringing jobs back to local countries is also very important in this process.
Okay. Does anybody else want to come?
Just to add to what John was saying, I think you're now actually seeing that there is choice in the marketplace, right? And that choice spans all the way down from the hardware, from where your compute is running, who's providing the silicon. You've seen a lot of new companies like Qualcomm, Marvell, even NVIDIA now investing in the space, which is great to see. And it spans to the software offerings as well, right? Up and down the stack. And so I think to John's point, I think it just was a bit of having the ecosystem maturity catch up with the diversity that's important, right? So that these solutions can then be deployed pretty seamlessly into the market.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, we've seen a lot of innovation in the time since we started. I think we've been through nearly four generations of Intel platform, right? And so, you know, every time there's been a capacity increase and a speed increase, etc. And you know, somebody commented this morning about, well, you know, but the R&D dollars are not the same as a single company. Well, in fact, I would argue completely the opposite. You know, there's 100 times more money being spent in R&D. If you take you know, Intel's R&D, ARM's R&D, and add them together, you know, you've got focused R&D at focused solutions. And the current incumbents can never achieve that. And that's why, you know, I think the recognition of joining the Open RAN Club is probably the right thing, because, you know, it's saving their R&D dollars as well, long term. That's to the benefit of the operator and the subscriber.
So there are quite a lot of vendors out there with Open RAN pitches and products. But yet we're hearing operators saying, yes, we're doing, you know, Telefonica made an announcement with Ericsson last week. Vodafone's made another announcement with Nokia. And I guess some operators might think, well, I thought this was all about working with different vendors. You know, the Huawei thing really pushed things on, and a lot of operators want to replace Huawei. But is it a little bit frustrating for anybody to see the operators, you know, saying we're going to do Open RAN now, but we're doing it with the same companies we were working with before? Or is everybody good with that? I know you're good with that, obviously. But everybody good with that?
I think the change is happening, you know, and obviously, you know, we would like to see more big wins, but in reality, you know, we're working with Telefonica, we're working with Vodafone, we're working with Deutsche Telekom, you know, we're working with Dish. At the end of the day, there's, you know, it's, and as it was said this morning, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution, and you know, and also in due respect, a lot of the companies that are coming into this space don't necessarily have the scale and the balance sheet, if you like, to do a lot of these very large deployments that the Nokia and Ericssons can do. So there's always going to be a place for the big incumbents and the new entrants, and over time the market will set itself out. But you know, it's probably a 10, 15 year journey that we're all on to really see this marketplace say, you know, the Open RAN has truly achieved its end goal.
Okay. Maybe if I can add to that, I think as incumbent, of course, for us, what we can bring into this ecosystem is the scale. And I think we can help the ecosystem to grow. So we come with a relatively large install base, and we well-known building practices, and we can bring that as part of the ecosystem to help it to grow. And of course, for us, it's a challenge, but also it's an opportunity. So we see also this as an opportunity to enter new market segment where we were not present before. So being part of the ecosystem gives new challenges, but also new opportunities also for an incumbent. So that's why I think this announcement that you have seen recently, even if they involve incumbent, they also involve a larger ecosystem and help to move the ecosystem of Open RAN forward.
Okay. So as well as in the sort of the RAN part of Open RAN, there was also a promise that Open RAN would be the catalyst for lots of new application developers to come in and be innovative and give operators you know, capabilities that they otherwise would never have had access to. But you know, are we seeing any of that? Has that really happened? Maria, if I can come to you, are we seeing much evidence of specialist companies coming in with, you know, software applications or particular, you know, apps maybe to run on the RAN intelligent controller, or is it a bit too early for that yet?
I mean, the reality is that as much as we would love to, we don't have a thriving developer community around Open RAN. Open RAN came with the promise of creating an open software platform for innovation based on open architectures. And the reality is that we are not there yet. We don't have the readiness on the interfaces. The RAN intelligent controller is very, very nascent still. And we haven't seen the developer community coming into the telecoms ecosystem and creating solutions out of that. Open RAN came with a promise that service differentiation was going to be given by this combination of software components in the network. And we haven't seen that happening from the vendor community, enabling that to actually happen. At Weaver Labs, we started working on in Open RAN very early in 2021. And 2 years later, we are still working on very basic connectivity issues, such as hardware-software compatibility, or even integration problems, and obviously now even having the conversation is the E2 interface ready or not? So the idea of creating XR apps through an SDK is still very far from reality right now. And although I do applaud, Ericsson coming into the ecosystem and the big operators doing very, very large-scale trials, I do think that we are now at the risk of Open RAN becoming just another deployment model and not being an actual catalyzer of innovation and actually opening up the telecoms industry to the developer community, because we are getting too fixated into this single enclosed environment, because obviously the challenge is huge, and I do agree with that. We need to deliver connectivity to millions of subscribers in the planet, but we also need to take risks, and we do not see many small players coming in because the barriers to entry are too high. And you mentioned the balance sheet problem. If I have to come and sell to a Vodafone or any big operator, probably my board of directors won't be very happy because of the burn rate that entails. So if you ask me why, I would say culture is the very first problem that we face in the industry. Investment is the other one. We don't get outward investment from venture capitalists betting on the industry, maybe because of cultural diversity not being there yet. But also I think the industry, big industry players need to make a bet in this if we actually want to change things.
Okay. And maybe if a lot of companies came forward and said, we've got an AI-enabled app for Open RAN, maybe the investors would come running to their door now, because that seems to be the big attraction. But that's been part of the pitch for ages, hasn't it? Automation enabled by AI, but that hasn't really, Open RAN hasn't really got caught up in the great big AI hype cycle, is it?
Well, I think cloud readiness is one of the biggest issues, because obviously for AI to be adopted, you need to have data acquisition, sanitization, and management through advanced software architectures, which we obviously don't have because of the underlying cloud infrastructure not being there yet. And the other thing that I am seeing right now is the trend is that the XR apps are actually being delivered by the vendors themselves, not actually opening up the SDKs. So then as an end-to-end orchestration platform, we end up integrating to a number of element managers instead of actually having open interfaces to do so. So that's actually going to delay a lot more this actually, the AI and the automation that was promised. Okay,
yeah, no, that does seem like a bottleneck on that side of the fence for sure. Okay, we talked earlier on about operators becoming a little bit more risk averse currently. But we also heard this morning as well, Rob Sony from AT&T made the point that the operators are at very different stages in their 5G journeys for lots of different reasons, I'm sure that we all know about. So existing 5G rollout plans and questions around 5G returns on investments as well are really high up the conversation stacks at the operators right now. And that might be making them nervous about moving first with disruptive alternatives such as Open RAN. Eduardo, is the mobile operator sector a bit too locked into its 5G plans at the moment to even create much room for Open RAN to become part of it in brownfield, of course?
Yeah, I think Part of what's important about a conference like this, right, is to be able to provide clarity, right, in areas where there isn't none, and clarity around the TCO value proposition, right, of ORAN, clarity around maturity of the solutions, and just to make sure that there's actually going to be operational simplicity in deploying them. I think that's more important than where people are in their state of their 5G journey. And I think it was great to see talks like a Beta Sun from NTT actually showing data, right, of what they've been able to achieve, showing things like power efficiency with benefits of 50% power improvement. That's really an important part for us at ARM that we're trying to advocate, right, with hardware diversity. The ecosystem is ready. One of the things I love about this stage is I've been working with almost most people here on this panel just to make sure that hardware and software code development actually exist, so that optimization work and getting all the bugs out of the systems are actually done before an operator even sees a POC. And so I think these things are part of what's going to be important, right, for people to kind of get over the skepticism because of the lack of proof points or data that they don't have today.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important point. I mean, obviously there's actually quite a lot of Open RAN activity in Japan in general, not just at Docomo. And obviously Vodafone is pushing things ahead, and Deutsche Telekom is making moves as well in Europe. But one of the other challenges already mentioned a few times by the panel is, the cloud readiness of the mobile operator community. And there's a sense still, in fact, TelecomTV did a little survey recently about where operators are in their cloud-native strategies, and there's quite a few still to even begin going down that road. So are operators operationally ready to manage Open RAN architectures in the way that's going to deliver the greatest positive outcomes? Are cloud-native strategies at operators really off the ground? Gil, if I can come to you on this, because obviously you need certain things to happen first before you can really take full advantage of what Open RAN offers. So are you seeing cloud-native adoption as a bottleneck to that next stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say more cloud architecture. Cloud native, it's a little bit maybe overloaded term, how you define it, especially when you get to the far edge of the network where you have a cell site with maybe 1 or 2 servers, okay? But definitely operating a cloud, operating it at scale. This whole concept, it's very new to the service provider, okay? Especially for the wireless side of the service provider. So I'm not talking the enterprise side, the IT part, and from now I would say 3 years journey, starting with Verizon and now with Vodafone, they are coming along, and I can see they're definitely getting there. Verizon is definitely there, Vodafone as we heard, but it is transformation internally inside the organization. Skill set, how they approach things, how they work with the ecosystem. Traditionally it was one vendor that provide the whole thing, it's box. They know basically pretty much if this light goes on, I need to plug this cable or unplug this cable. Now it's a whole different level. It's a software disaggregation. I need to be able to log into and troubleshoot things, or look actually to be able to identify what happened, understand the data that comes to me, the logs and alarms that are coming to me. What does it mean? Because a lot of them are new stuff that they didn't see before. Okay, this is a transformation on how they operate the network, the whole approach of how to set it up and operate it. Okay. And they're getting there. But like I said before, it's about, I would say the operator has a very big role here in sharing the data. Traditionally, they keep a lot of the data internally because all different business reasons. And then when you don't share the data, you don't know, so it's a lot riskier. So a lot more sitting on the fence and waiting to see. More sharing of the data basically will allow to accelerate more sharing of the knowledge.
Okay. Does the panel think that we heard this morning about we need to share more, collaborate more, and there is more collaboration going on, but will the operators share the information and data that the other operators, might be able to benefit from? Is that something that's going to happen in reality? whether it's through TIP or any other industry body? I mean, what level of information is going to be shared?
Yeah, I think you're seeing the openness in the operator community. The reason that the O-RAN Alliance was formed was because by the operators, and the operators are making this thing happen. And to that extent, I think Sid again, said about being open about challenges in the integration of the network amongst vendors. Now, I know as one of the vendors for Dish, we sat around the table with the 30 other vendors, all sharing the problems. We knew what Samsung's problems were. We knew what they knew what our problems are, and so that and that was just a fact of life. The only way that we're all going to work to a common goal is share the problems and try and fix them. And I think the Open RAN community is actually doing that. We will share our interfaces and we will do interoperability testing. Again, we've interoperated with 14 plus radio vendors and proven that the specs are correct and the specs are right. Some of the comments you've heard on the front haul specs, that's the evolution of the front haul. It's not about where the problems with the front haul today is. So I think the willingness is there, both at the technology level and at the operational level, to share information amongst the community.
Okay.
I think the industry's been very successful at collaborating around standards, right? And I think now we're seeing that move to collaborating around best concepts, best practices, right, in terms of deployment of some of the O-RAN solutions. And I think there's more to go. I think Gil was right in some of that. Some of the data that will help us tune the performance or the efficiency of the systems, right, is some of the data that the operators will be able to have and provide. Everything from how to benchmark the hardware, how to optimize the software, how to make sure that deployment can happen in a short period of time. I think that level of data is going to be important, right, for all of us here on stage to be able to continue to provide better and better solutions.
Yep. Okay. And yes, you mentioned the specifications there, and that's been mentioned in quite a few of the sessions this morning as well. But is there any sense that the Open RAN sector is still being perhaps held up by a lack of some of the key industry specifications, or have we gone beyond that point? Matteo, if I can come to you on this one.
I think that the industry had made a tremendous progress in solidifying the open specifications in different standardization bodies. Maybe most and foremost, in the past few years, we have seen the O-RAN Alliance maturing a lot as a standardization body, as becoming probably the most important standardization bodies together with 3GPP in releasing open specification for building open networks. There are a few success stories that our O-RAN Alliance has achieved. Like for us, for example, there has been a big achievement earlier this year in the agreement in the O-RAN Alliance to define a new open frontal specification that is optimized for massive MIMO. But it's not only, for example, we have seen that O-RAN Alliance has decided to create a new work group specific for security. This is the work group 11, which we think is extremely important because now this work group will, and already started to make sure that all the specification coming out of the O-RAN Alliance will be secure to industry best practices and best standards. Another example I can make is, for example, in the O2 interface for infrastructure management, where there has been a good alignment and initial good alignment with IT specification and de facto standards like Kubernetes APIs, which I think is very important so that we don't create fragmentation between the specification in the O-RAN Alliance that are more telco heavy versus the IT interfaces for cloud. So we have seen tremendous progress. And of course, there is always room to improve. So there are improvements. I think that Maria has made a good point about the SDK and the northbound, for example, of the SMO to simplify the integration of, for example, our apps on top of a non-real-time RIC platform. I think that the R1 interface is there. Maybe we have to do more work to make it good and solid and have the industry to take it and make it really multi-vendor. We also see that it's important that we go through other standardization bodies, for example, through timely delivery of the O-RAN specification to ETSI Pass, so that we can sort out any possible IPR concerns on the O-RAN specification and large-scale O-RAN deployments. I think these things are already in place, but they can, of course, be improved. But overall, I would say tremendous progress, and I would say that the specifications themselves are not really a hinder for large-scale Open RAN deployment.
Okay. Do we have agreement across the panel that the specifications are ready to rock?
So I would say, I would like to add here, I think very good points there. See, specifications, again, it's a journey. You create a specification based on what you would believe would happen. But when you go into deployments, the learnings come into the next levels of specifications, right? So all that stuff is happening. So we talked about the challenges on O2 and O1 and E2 being slower because it's coming into deployment now. So we are going to learn, the specifications will evolve with that. I think most important, we all need to make sure that the industry is keeping pace with also accepting those specifications and implementing those so that everybody is at the same page.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to bring in that you know, there seems to be a misunderstanding, if you like, about what's going on with specifications. The overarching specification for Open RAN is with 3GPP on the radio interface, and that's been there for 5-10 years, right? And that still exists, that still applies to everything we do in the RAN space. What's changing is obviously the interface between the radio and the baseband controller, which has been the proprietary interface in the past, and that's evolving, and we'll expect it to continue to evolve. The first iteration of that spec was actually adopted by ETSI, probably, I think it was like almost nearly a year ago, 2 years ago. And so, you know, from that perspective, that specification is solid, it's proven to be interoperable, and operators have deployed it. Now what's going on with, you know, the Ericsson enhancement, if you like, on a specific edge case is the ability to put a new interface in there. Now we expect that to happen in all areas. And that's just an ongoing process as you've got in 3GPP with new features coming out in 3GPP. So, you know, specifications are solid, overarching spec is 3GPP, and then the rest goes on from there.
Okay.
I think John has made a good point. We will see the evolution of all the specifications. So as we go forward, I mean, maybe the Open Frontal is one of the most mature. There are other specifications on the Open Alliance that are reaching their maturing point and will continue to evolve, becoming more and more mature with more and more functionalities. And most likely we'll all have to go through the ETSI pass process. So it's not just the Open Frontal, but all the open interfaces in the Open Alliance are becoming more mature. They will benefit from going through the ETSI pass process and, as Munish said, being solidified, becoming standardized, adopted by the industry, and really interoperable. That may take still a little time. I think we are on that journey, but it may take a little bit more to get really stable.
Okay.
I just think that there is one thing that I would like to see more, and it's interworking between Open Alliance 3GPP with ETSI, especially the ETSI NFV and the whole MANO community. There is a bit of overlap, especially around 0102, and this whole O-Cloud concept that obviously ETSI NFV has been working for a very, very long time on virtual infrastructure management and the whole infrastructure management layer. And it seems sometimes that we are speaking different languages. And it would be great to see the community coming together and finding a demarcation and saying, okay, so this is where, you know, we finish and this is where you start. There is a bit of overlap there, and I think it needs a bit more clarity.
Okay, good takeaway. And speaking of takeaways, we will come to some now from our panel, because incredibly, the 40 minutes allotted time is nearly up. So we've been talking about bottlenecks. If I can get a comment from each of you, starting with you, Matteo, what specifically needs to happen next in the sector to help accelerate investments, commitments to Open RAN deployments?
Well, maybe I would say that these two things, maybe into consecutive steps. The first is solidifying the interfaces to become not only interfaces that are mature on the paper, but also on the actual interoperability deployments. And the second step is taking the first step together with tier one operators, especially the ones that are more on the front line, to realize large-scale Open RAN deployment. These two steps will be key to enable Open RAN.
Okay. Munish.
So I would say Open RAN is here, is getting deployed. We're all learning with all these deployments, and I'm sure we'll all improve through this. But whatever we learn, we have to look at how do we reduce this pain for next level of deployments to come in, which will come through certifications and standardizations around those levels where we ensure that the same mistake is not repeated in the next level of deployments.
Okay. Gil.
I will say more operator commitment, bold moves. It's all about the strategies. Verizon made a strategic decision to go and roll out, so is Vodafone, and they're making it happen. The rest of operators need to do the same thing. And O-RAN is already here, but to get to a large scale and to be a lot more efficient, it's about the commitment and getting it done.
Okay. Maria.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with him as well, like in terms of being bold, taking risks, and more operator commitment in terms of creating an actual open ecosystem.
Okay. Eduardo.
I think we're all excited about the RFI, RFQ cycles that are going to happen in 2024, right? The commitment that some of the key tier 1 operators are making, I think is going to be a catalyst, right, for the industry. And so we're all, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that we're excited about seeing, Ericsson's and Nokia's finally seeing the open light. Now, to leave it on a note, I just wish they would open up the interfaces that should be open, such as the X2, XN interface, to allow the Open RAN integrators to get on and build proper brownfield networks and totally integrated networks to the best of the operators. So if nothing more, if we're in this open community, let's open up the interfaces that were specified to be open and not use them for commercial advantage.
Okay. Well, there we have it. Time is up for this session. Thank you very much to the audience for being here. Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause for our speakers for this session. Thank you very much. Well done.